If you're going for the best bang for your buck when it comes to a sub $100 used laptop, then a ThinkPad T420 or even a T410 if you can't find a T420 for a reasonable price are the machines for you. Now, if you have a little bit more money to work with and you're in the market for something more portable yet still powerful, then the X1 Carbon 3rd Gen is right up your alley. And if you're looking for a happy medium between the two, then don't, because that's stupid. What you're going to end up with is a laptop born from the bin of mediocrity. If you want something portable, X1 Carbon 3rd Gen. If you want something cheap with tons of ports, decent thermals, and excellent durability, ThinkPad T420. The ThinkPad T410s is just a weird mashup between the two. And yeah, the T410s comes before the release of the X1 machines in 2011, so I can see why this fit into the ThinkPad product line back in the day in 2010 when this thing was released. But even now, with the existence of the X1 line, they still make these weird S variants of the standard 14-inch ThinkPad laptop. And for the love of God, I can't figure out why. So size-wise, the T410s is only slightly thinner than the T410. The T410 comes in at about 32 millimeters at its thickest point, and the T410s is about 6 millimeters thinner at approximately 26 millimeters at its thickest point. There is even less of a difference between the T420 and T410s, as the T420 is only about 31 millimeters at its thickest point. To me, this thickness is almost negligible, as most people aren't going to notice the difference when carrying this around in a bag on a daily basis. That being said, the weight difference is a little more noticeable, with the T410 weighing 5 pounds 3 ounces and the T410s weighing about 3 pounds and 13 ounces. If you have back problems, I could see why maybe this T410s might make more sense. But once again, I don't think most normal people are going to notice the difference here. And these size and weight reductions come with some heavy practicality trade-offs that just aren't worth it. For starters, ports. This thing only has 2 USB 2.0 ports. And it's not that they were limited by space here. There's plenty of empty space to add more USB ports on the case. They just chose to only have 2. The T410 has 4, and the X1 Carbon 3rd Gen has the same number, it has 2, but with a way smaller footprint than the T410s. Once again, I get that the X1 Carbon came out after the T410s, I know that, but we're talking about the used market here. Now, it does also have an SD card reader, audio jack, DisplayPort, eSATA, VGA, and Ethernet, but to have all of these and only have 2 USB ports just seems like such an oversight to me. I'd much rather have the T410 or T420 in this case. Serviceability is kinda a pain in the butt. For example, to remove the heatsink in the T410s, you basically have to strip the laptop down to each individual bit, which is fun. Whereas with the slightly clunkier T410, you basically just have to remove the keyboard and some plastic bezels, and you can contort the heatsink out. Now, service on the T410s is doable thanks to the service manual Lenovo provides, but once again, I would gladly take the T410. While we're on the topic of serviceability, the quirky drive in this laptop is definitely worth a mention. In this laptop's drive bay, you will find a 1.8-inch Toshiba SSD. These are kinda an oddity now, as they're rarely seen anymore in the consumer space, and replacements are magnitudes more expensive than their standard 2.5-inch SATA counterparts. And you know, it's a pretty cute little drive until you have to replace it or want to upgrade it, and you see the price tag of one of these things. For example, I'm looking at a 128GB 1.8-inch drive on Amazon right now, and it's $100 just for 128 gigabytes. So you can only imagine how much more expensive they get as you start to go up in storage space. And now we get to my favorite oddity about this ThinkPad T410s. And honestly, this is so weird, I'm not even sure if this is factory. It looks like something that someone slapped on as an afterthought, really. And this is one of the biggest afterthoughts I've ever seen on one of these ThinkPads. And that is the cooling solution for what appears to be the North Bridge. So if you lift up the keyboard, you can see that there's this little thermal pad just kind of stuck to the keyboard, and it's not even stuck to the keyboard well because there's a ribbon cable running under it, and that appears to be cooling the North Bridge for this laptop. I'm having an incredibly hard time believing that this is something that it rolled out with out of the factory. I mean, this looks like an aftermarket repair, and a questionable one at that. So let's get some confirmation rolling in the comments section here. Hardware-wise, there is one major pro to this machine. One thing actually makes this thing worth a thought. 32 watt-hour Media Bay battery. That's right, 32 watt-hour Media Bay battery. Everyone say it with me, 32 watt-hour Media Bay battery. I don't know why they stopped making these compatible with the base ThinkPads. For example, the T410 and T420 can't use these, but the S versions can. They're just so practical. I mean, if you don't need your CD/DVD drive, you can take it out and you can replace it with this little slice battery that goes into the DVD drive bay. And it's great because it doesn't take up any additional external space on the outside of the laptop. For example, the T410 and T420, they have a slice battery, and this thing's massive and adds like 1.5 pounds to the laptop, but it's basically like a dock. You take the laptop, you put it on top of the slice battery, and you carry it around like that. And it adds like an extra 3 hours of battery life, but it's just terrible to try and take the laptop and carry it around after you put that big sucker on. So I think this is just such a better way to get more battery life out of your machine. And the great thing is these slice batteries are compatible across a wide variety of ThinkPads. I mean, the one you're looking at in the video clip is actually the one that I had from my Thinkpad T60. And I just pulled it out of the T60 and put it right into the T410s, and it just worked. And that's really how these things should be. If you have the chance to get one of these for really cheap, and I mean like $40 cheap, or if you have the opportunity to snag one for free, absolutely go for it, because this is, after all, still a ThinkPad T-Series. And with that, you get great build quality, a fantastic keyboard, and most importantly, a track point. While yes, this is only using a first-gen i-series chip, and yes, I agree with you all who comment that the second-generation processors are leaps ahead of the first-gens, the T410s still has enough horsepower to run Windows 10 and perform basic office/school tasks, and if you get the version with the dedicated graphics, like this model with an NVS 3100M, you can also get away with some very light games. As we saw in the video where we ran Zorin OS on this thing, as expected, this laptop runs even better with Linux. Link to that video in the description. It does have some slight thermal problems though with the stock CPU fan profile. When the CPU is under 100% load, it will throttle consistently to keep the temps at an acceptable range. It's worth noting that this laptop was missing a shim for the GPU section of the heatsink, so I replaced it with a copper penny. But I don't really think that's a factor here, as the GPU clock appeared to stay consistent across my testing. This was easily remedied by installing TP fan control and maxing out the fan speed, though I don't recall a need to do this with the base model T410. Though a good machine, I wouldn't recommend going out of your way to get one of these. The T420 and T410 are a much better value, and the X1 Carbon actually provides a significant size and weight reduction over the base T-Series models. I can see the place for this S version when it was released, but on today's used market, it makes little sense to purchase one of these. Well, of course, besides the 32 watt-hour Media Bay battery option. And by the way, if you want to check out the seller where I got this Lenovo T410s from for $60 plus $17 shipping off eBay, I will put the link to that seller down in the description so you guys can see if he has any other ThinkPads for cheap. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next installment of A Computers and Technology.
you.